Good afternoon, everyone. I think um, I think we'll try and respect folks' times, and we'll get started now. Thanks for joining us and for taking the time and the interest in this topic. My name is Gord Tulloch, and I'm the Director of Innovation at Possibilities. I recognize probably that a lot of you joining from different parts of BC and across Canada, and that still, no matter where we are, we're all situated on land that has been stewarded by First Peoples for millennia. And so in our case, the organization is participating in this research, and the research itself is taking place on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples. And that includes the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam people. And we just want to take a moment to acknowledge our gratitude for their care and for their teachings around the land we inhabit, the water, the sky, and the life that they sustain. And I think in this era, particularly for their wisdom around the interconnectedness of all things, feels kind of especially urgent today that we recover this sense of respect and reverence for the world and everything in it. So over the last several years, just by way of a quick introduction, Possibilities and its partners, Kinsight and Burnaby Association for Community Inclusion, we've been on this journey to try and understand what it means to flourish. And as part of that journey, we turned to the literature base, which probably unsurprisingly talked about the importance of the inward journey. That it's not just about what's happening on the outside, like jobs and security, health, and so forth, but things like meaning and purpose matter, and belonging, and learning, and growth, and creativity. And we also came across this extensive body of literature that clearly showed that that those with some sort of spiritual belief or practice, and it didn't really matter what it was, they had better life outcomes when it came to their social, psychological, and physical well-being. So it meant that if we're really serious about human flourishing, then we had to start paying attention to it. And that discovery around the importance of spirituality to flourishing, it kicked off actually several years worth of explorations. And it also led us to the door of the Center for Civic and Religious Literacy, who began with us sort of looking into how religious and non-religious spirituality was showing up in the community living sector. And they were sort of speaking to different constituent groups about that, whether it was agencies like our staff, managers, and boards, families, and folks with lived experience. And I just want to note as well that a couple peer organizations helped us along the way. We were really at the beginning of this journey, and they've been walking the road for actually a while. So we just want to give a quick shout out to the Islamic Family Social Services Association in Alberta, and to CARIS Disability Services in Ontario and Saskatchewan. And to acknowledge as well that this research was made possible because of support from Red Leaf Foundation. They have a very unique vision and value set and a sense of adventurousness that really align nicely with the journey we were on. So I want to just say thank you to all the companions along our journey and supporters. And on this journey, one of the things that has been important to pay attention to is how spirituality concretely shows up in people's lives. And so one of the people we heard from is Sandra. And we just want to take a moment to begin this afternoon, by sharing part of her story with you now.
I'm holding an eagle feather in my hand. The eagle feather honors the truth, the reconciliation, and I speak openly, honestly through the animal spirit, which is the bald eagle. Unsaved. Hello, my name is Sandra Pronto. I am a Cree Métis originated from the Paul, Manitoba. I am now residing on the land of Burnaby, British Columbia, home of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Coast Salish people, and my children are Tsimshian Nation. So I'm very honored to be a part of West Coast culture and family. Smudging for us is a way of cleansing our mind, our ears to hear and listen, our eyes to see, our mouth to speak good words, wisdom, and our body is to protect it. It's like going to church and getting blessed and doing your bread and your wine. I live in two worlds. I practice my Indigenous culture, and I also practice my Western Christian side, which is attending church. I was told you can either be a non-Native person or you can be a full committed Native person who will practice the Indigenous cultures. I value both. It has been a long journey growing up, like crisis identity. I'm a 60 scoop survivor, so I had to learn, not by choice, it was actually forced on me to live the non-Native culture. I had a little bit of exposure with one foster family. They were Ojibwe. So I went to a powwow. I learned a little bit about their way of life, but I didn't understand it, and I wasn't ready at the time. So it was later in life I was able to connect with other elders, other Indigenous people, and share our teachings and learning. Beautiful. Our people have always been the caretakers of the land. Nature has always been one of our teachings from our ancestors. Just being connected to nature is also a healthy spiritual component. It is what replenishes us, and just listening to the sounds of the stillness, hear the birds, the wind, the leaves, soft whispers in the trees. I apply in the medicine wheel concept, which is 4 quadrants. We have the mental, the spiritual, physical, and the emotional. All of that needs to be properly in balance. And that is when you know you're walking the red road. And the red road is about staying on your path, not getting sidetracked, bumped off. A lot can happen, and it's only up to you to recognize that, and you need to stop, slow down, reflect. Okay, this is what's happening in my life today. I didn't know my Native culture till later in life, and once I was able to grasp on that, I was also able to see the Euro settlers' way of life, but I can also see from an Indigenous perspective. The two eyes seeing approach is the best way to go about it in order to strengthen your spirituality and how you perceive life in the world. I feel that people need to understand that Indigenous people can have both worlds. We still have a long way to go with that. I'm a part of a group called KIMSI. It's Canadian Indigenous Ministry Committee, and we're all like faith-based believer, and we're seeking justice because we're still dealing with some not so welcoming, inviting invitation from some of our churches. When we speak up on Indigenous issues, I'm often reminded about the truth and reconciliation and how that needs to be like continuously expressed to them. Church should be open to all. Spirituality is something that is crucial. I live in two worlds. I value both.
Wow. So, uh, Sandra, again, thanks for the gift of your story. I think so, part of the power of the stories like yours, it's not just that we learned something. I think like our hearts and our souls are nourished too. So, so I think you'll all agree we kind of need more stories. We need to listen more. And that they not only can help to bridge differences, like closing the distance between settler and indigenous, neurotypical, neurodiverse, but they also tell us something about ourselves, the human condition, and about this sort of collective grappling with our place in the universe. So thank you. I'm going to turn things over, I think, now to Alice Chan and Margie Patrick from the Center for Civic and Religious Literacy. They've been the primary researchers and also two really incredibly thoughtful and lovely people who have made this project particularly special and meaningful. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Gord, for that kind introduction. And thank you again, Sandra, for sharing your story with us, sharing your voice with us, and being here on this call today to join us, and then also be open to share more and answer any questions that people have for you later on. Hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. Yes, my name is Alice, and I am the Executive Director and co-founder of the Center for Civic Religious Literacy. We are a secular nonprofit that aims to promote religious literacy, which is a civic competency that helps us understand spiritual, religious, and secular perspectives from an intersectional lens. And I'm very thankful to be joining you today from Montreal, also known as Chukchoge, on unceded territory cared for by the Kanien'kehá:ka peoples.
And I'm Margie, one of the subject matter experts on the team at CCRL. I am joining from Amiskawasi, Waskahikan, also known as Edmonton, a gathering place and home for many Indigenous peoples since time immemorial, and now part of Treaty 6 territory and a home to many Métis. I'm a professor in the Faculty of Education at the King's University.
Yes, and so the purpose of this call today is really to open the conversation. Gord has done that, Sandra has done that, and we continue to do that throughout our conversation together so that we can share the research findings so far from this project. And there are many, and it is rich. And so for today in this 1 hour, we are able to share what's possible at a high level to open the conversation with you today, and also save time to answer any questions that you may have. Just so you know, there will be 2 upcoming reports with more details available later on. We'll be sure to send them to you when they are ready. So as we begin, I wanted to also share a quick introduction to who we are at CCRL and how our perspective and background contribute to this conversation. We are a team of educators as well as researchers who work across the country, and our work is education-based. Each initiative is specific to the groups that we work with and includes small towns, nonprofits, young adults, for example. But really in each initiative, we work based on the 3 key approaches that you see here on the screen. That all our initiatives are evidence-based, whether it's working off research from others in a certain topic, or we conduct our own research to learn more. And all of our work is also region specific because we understand what's happening in British Columbia may look different from what's happening in Nova Scotia, for example, due to history and local dynamics. And we also work in collaboration with partners, such as we do in this project with Possibilities, Bocce, Kinsight, and Curiko. And really, this is to ensure that we can bring a comprehensive approach to the conversation as best as possible. And our approach to religious literacy is based on 5 principles that help us understand, examine, analyze, question, and identify different aspects of religious, spiritual, and secular life in society and the world. We won't go into detail about it today, but it is available through that QR code on the top corner of your screen there if you'd like to know more. In this particular project, however, instead of using the language of religious literacy, we use a language of spiritual literacy with respect to the large number of secular individuals in BC and Metro Vancouver. So what was this project? What did it entail? Well, we wanted to understand what spirituality among uh, individuals, adults in particular, with IDD looked like. So we engaged three groups in our project. First, we wanted to assess how agencies understand and enact their role in spiritual literacy and support. So we distributed a survey to staff across the three agencies of Possibilities, Bocce, and Kinsight, and then we hosted focus groups and analyzes details with staff. And then secondly, we wanted to, of course, understand how adults with IDD learn about and engage in spirituality. So Curiko, one of our project partners, hired peer spirituality explorer, Tanya, who is here with us as well today. Thanks, Tanya. And Tanya offered experiences related to spirituality. Then Margie and I conducted interviews with 6 participants who joined Tanya and through these activities. And then we hosted focus groups with program facilitators to learn more. Currently, in the third phase, we aim to understand how family members are feeling and what they observe about their loved ones' engagement with spirituality. And we will share high-level details about each of these phases today. But really, we began this project with a literature review, and we thought it'd be important to share that our 4 key findings with you today. First, when we read existing studies about this work, we found that there is no common definition of spirituality. Although the ideas of community and connection were common among the many definitions, no single common definition existed. Secondly, is that most of the research on this topic of spirituality and people with IDD is done in the US. Thirdly, it is focused primarily on Christianity and experiences in churches. And then lastly, it is very much about people with IDD rather than with them. So in this project, what we've really tried to do is offer Canadian voices. So our project was, of course, located in Canada. And as Gord shared, we really tried to highlight the voices of the participants as much as possible. And this is what you will hear in our presentation today.
All right, so we'll start with some findings from phase 2 that emerged from the survey and focus groups with staff across the agencies. So generally, the agency staff are unclear about what is involved in providing spiritual literacy and support, including what is expected of them and how to ethically and practically provide it. So there were 4 specific findings that came out of some of the data. The first is, as already has been alluded in the Lit review, is that spirituality is a very ambiguous concept. And many staff, from frontline workers to managers to board members, all wanted a common definition. And together in various focus groups that we had, we tried to come up with a definition or even alternative words that could describe it, but there was never any agreements. But 2 things stand out from these conversations. That first, many staff at all levels thought that people with IDD could not understand spirituality, in part because they interpreted it as head knowledge, beliefs, for example, with little room for embodied practices, experiences, or heart loves. And second, that spirituality was often conflated with religion. And initially, when we wrote the report for this first phase, we did recommend that agencies develop a common definition, but you will see that after we completed phase 3, we are no longer making that recommendation, and Alice will talk about why. The second finding is that managers and frontline staff tend to have different starting points. So in the survey, more frontline workers self-described as religious, mostly Christian, than directors and management did. although clearly there were staff at all levels who self-identified as secular. These differences led to some tensions, as some managers expressed concern about religious staff possibly evangelizing to the people they serve. However, frontline staff were very clear that they were aware of how impressionable some of the people that they work with can be, and they did not want to unduly influence them. And so their request for training indicated a desire to respect the agency and autonomy of the people that they served. And they also were very cognizant of family preferences. And it was very interesting that no one commented on the tension of imposing secularism as the unquestioned status quo. The third finding is the treatment of sexuality and spirituality, is similar. And so tensions in this conversation reminded several staff about similar tensions in a previous conversation they had had about the intimacy needs of persons with IDD. And certainly that conversation may offer a model for possibly more discussions and training around spiritual literacy. And the last finding from this phase was guidelines and training are needed. This is a new conversation, and staff clearly stated the need for training and the desire to hear from management about parameters. And what was really important is that in the absence of training and direction, the status quo is the safe option, which is to say nothing, because then I won't get into trouble. Which means that this aspect of being human is not fulsomely addressed. So we're going to share only 2 questions from the survey that capture a couple of important themes from the entire project. When staff were asked whether the people they work with have spiritual needs, a very significant majority said yes. But what is really important here is that respondents agreed in the affirmative whether they self-identified as religious, spiritual, or secular. When asked whether staff should be supporting people with their spiritual development and expression, the numbers drop a little bit, but there is still a solid majority that responded in the affirmative. The question is how? What might this look like, especially when agencies and staff are already stretched thin? We recognize that this is a high-level look at stage 2. We are scheduling some time at the end of the presentation if you have any questions. For now, we will move on to stage 4 before returning to stage 3. We are currently working on this phase, which focuses on family members of people with IDD. The agencies distributed a survey and did a great job of mobilizing families to respond. We also conducted a couple of focus groups. And so in the survey, we asked family members the same question that we asked staff. Do you think your family member with IDD has spiritual needs? Although the support was slightly less than among staff, you can see that a strong majority indicated yes. But they were far more split than staff about whether agencies should assist people with IDD to explore and express their spirituality. You can see the split is around 50-50. Respondents on both sides of the divide provide various reasons for their responses. From what we have seen thus far, there is no one overriding reason provided for either side. We conclude this phase with this quote from a family member. I think faith or spirituality is underexamined in the lives of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities because of assumptions about their capacity to navigate more esoteric constructs. This is naive and ableist thinking. To reiterate what was said earlier, when family respondents conflated spirituality with belief or head knowledge, they tended to say that spirituality was inaccessible to their family member. Those who understood it to be more connected with being, belonging, and purpose would more likely align with the author of this quote. So up to this point, we have shared what we heard about adults with IDD from staff and family members. Now we would like to turn our attention and share what the adults told us themselves. So in this stage, we gathered views from adults with IDD. Interviews were shaped and formed by the Curiko experiences and previous ones through the agencies, but those were prior to this research project. So given the very broad and amorphous nature of the term spirituality, for this phase, we defined it as these 4 points of connections to self, others, nature, and the transcendent. We borrowed this definition from a study done by a prof at Brock University in Ontario when she was investigating the spirituality of Canadian youth. And this stage was implemented by Curiko, which is many things, including a community and a platform that brings people together to share experiences. And as Alice noted, Curiko hired a peer spiritual explorer, Tanya, who offered different ways to participate, either one-on-one with online and in-person options, and 13 cohort experiences. Altogether, 30 distinct individuals engaged in one or both of these options. And you can see here some of the experiences the cohort did together throughout the 13 activations. For example, they created mandalas when exploring connections to self. They composed blessings for others when discovering connections to others. They designed floral arrangements and visited Pacific Spirit Park, which we understand was a highlight, when engaging with nature. And they explored religious and secular objects and visited sacred sites when connecting to the transcendent. Of the 30, 6 agreed to be interviewed. We recognize that such a small and very specific sample size does not allow us to generalize our findings. However, the rich insights, as you will see as Alice unpacks them, reveal what is possible when agencies take engagement with spirituality seriously. And we are highlighting 2 quotes here as testament to the depth of conversation that we had in the interviews. One participant said, "Many think that people with a neurodivergent brain don't have an understanding enough and not grasping it, but actually, we may be understanding at a different level than they realize." And another participant said, "We are not dolls that are about to break." The first quote addresses the concern that people with IDD cannot understand spirituality. Again, we recognize that our small sample size cannot be generalized, but the people we interviewed did have a lot to say. The second quote reveals a rejection of the fragility narrative, and Alice will talk much more about this as she reviews the findings from this phase.
Thanks, Margie. Yes, in this phase of the project, we have 6 findings from our conversations with the adults to share with you. The first theme is that participants express that spirituality is part of flourishing. Our participants, they told us that for them, religion and spirituality was not the same, but how they told us was actually more nuanced than how staff described this. And each definition of spirituality that they shared was different. and unique. But there were, of course, some commonalities. And this is where we heard many of them share about how spirituality is about balance and integration for them, connection and belonging. And for many of them, this contributed to their resiliency. They use words like collided and wholeness to describe how many parts of who they were coincided and needed to coexist to be connected spiritually. And they understood the framework that Margie introduced earlier, those 4 points of spiritual connection. They use those terms and those points of connection to describe spirituality, even without our prompting in the conversations that we had. And our second finding is specifically about connection to self and agency. And so among the 4 points of connection, connection to self we found was actually the strongest and unique in some ways. And so in Valerie Mickelson's research about the 4 points of connection, she also found that among the young Canadians, this was also very strong in her study too. But the adults we spoke with explained this significance further. We heard that participants actually who claimed agency over their lives, they rejected labels and limitations that had been placed on them by others, including institutions. So during our co-analysis meetings, this is what one person said. And I'll read this quote for us here. I think that's a new part, to be listening to ourselves, the inside. For many years, we were listening to others, parents. That's new for Western culture for us. That's where there's some tension. Listening to ourselves, but inundated with the outside. The old and institutional way is there, still there and hasn't gone away. We're doing it, but still voices opposing what we feel is right for ourselves. This participant who helped us co-analyze our findings recognized the tension in rejecting labels. And in that same conversation, another individual said, quote, when you have IDD or a neurodiverse brain, you feel like you are different at a very young age. So there is a need in people to find that peace within ourselves, to connect with ourselves, to find that acceptance in ourselves because of feeling different and not necessarily knowing where do we belong, end quote. And then same conversation, another participant summarizes further and said, when you already love yourself and feel like you belong to this earth, then you can help others feel like they belong, end quote. So in other words, we learned in this finding that caring and connection with others started with caring for yourself first. The third finding in our project here in this phase is that project participants were generally open to learning about spirituality compared to staff we spoke with in other parts of the project, especially. One participant used the word childlike to describe her approach to spirituality. And we understand, Margie and I learned that through this project that this term can raise some red flags. For some, it might mean an internalized ableism or stigma, but for this participant who shared this self-description, it actually was not perceived as a form of weakness or deficit, but they described it in terms of a unique strength and advantage, actually. And it was a way to describe how free she felt, how she wasn't concerned with social norms, constructs, or hierarchies. And as a person with autism and friends who do too, she described in quotes, we all seem to share this kind of childlikeness. And so having a childlikeness also allows you to be open and to have faith and to be much more open than maybe the average person, end quote. Another participant in this finding, we also found that they really focused on being curious. They loved visiting the houses of worship beyond her Christian tradition, and they shared. She shared her love of learning, doing it together in a cohort, and really enjoyed the idea that you can visit houses of worship even if you aren't a member of those religious communities. And so this finding really captures for us a general approach to spiritual development from the adults we spoke with, that having an open mind, asking questions, courageous questions, and being curious and exploratory was important. and it's really how they approach spirituality overall. And then our fourth finding is that there are many modes to engage in spirituality, because this was wonderful because we wanted to learn about how adults with IDD were engaging with spirituality. And so our report will share some examples that we found in the literature review and what I'll share here in detail. But really, we found that participants engaged based on certain preferences. One related to people. So was it in a group or one-on-one? And then another related to a mode of engagement. Was it with words or was it beyond words? And if with words, at least ensure that there's plain language that everyone can access. And so when we explored what it meant to engage beyond words, the importance of doing and feeling, that was very, very clear. Spirituality was not just something that related to beliefs or groups that you belong to, but for participants, it was very much related to how they felt and acted. We're excited to share those examples with you when the report is ready. And our fifth finding is about relationships. We learned that participants' engagement with spirituality was influenced by many different people in their lives. Some were uplifting and some were harmful. And harmful relationships created a sense of fear and doing things wrong, as they put it. And in the past, some participants had been told that there were specific ways to be, which left them, in their own words, humiliated, traumatized, hurt, or angered. And this included relationships with family members, caregivers, and people from religious communities. And sometimes people could be well-meaning, but misunderstandings about different types of disabilities still existed, or there may have been inaccessible places of or activities that challenged the way that they could engage. So in contrast, there were positive relationships, and when this happened, it empowered and encouraged them. They didn't feel confined to any particular definition, role, or label as someone with a disability. And really, many of us might think, of course, the fact that relationships influence spiritual engagement is makes sense. It's real for everyone. But we also we realize that it was especially impactful for adults with IDD because they may need a greater degree of support in their daily lives from the people around them, which of course impacts their sense of autonomy and agency. And lastly, our sixth finding related to the topic of fear. This topic came up often in each phase of our project on spirituality, and also this focus on managing risk and safety. We heard a lot about managing risk, especially from staff. And when we shared some of the staff's thoughts with our participants, they were quick to respond. One participant said that, quote, "We need to be aware of safety and be supportive, but not avoid it because someone might be triggered. They need extra support, someone to talk to," end quote. At the end of the day, she explained that, quote, "I think it's not treating people with disabilities as dolls that are going to break," which is the quote that Margie shared earlier. And really, this final thought about treating individuals as dolls that are fragile, weak, or about to break leaves a lasting impression on us and in our minds. It reminds us that spirituality is engaged by everyone in their own ways. And if we truly want to support anyone in their exploration and deeper understanding, we need to recognize that their preferences and ways may not necessarily look like ours, even if we actually believe or feel the same about certain spiritual points of connection. So as an example, we'd like to share now a video from Devon. Thank you to Rihanna Toy, who made this beautiful video, and thank you to Devon, who shared his thoughts with us here. Margie and I have never met Devon before, but the video here we've learned from and also illustrates how relationships influence spiritual engagement, but also how spiritual engagement, of course, does not have to be religious and belief-based, but engaged in different ways.
We all need to feel a connection greater than us. This is not a luxury but a human right.
My name is Devon, and I'm so excited to be part of this project. My name is Devon, and I'm so excited to be part of this project.
Devon, are these answers in your own words?
They are my answers. Yes, they are my answers.
I found my spirituality in nature. I feel the most connected to everything when I'm at one with nature, meaning there is no separation between me, the trees, the ocean, the mountains, as if they are part of me. I feel their peace like it's my peace. I feel their happiness like it's my happiness. My grandmother always tells the story of when I was 6 months old, on a road trip to Banff, riding in the back seat of the car looking admiringly at the scenery. She's never noticed a kid appreciate nature like that, much less a baby. When there is a beautiful trail and an ocean view, I am in heaven. This helps me focus on the here and now. To me, being present, happy and appreciating life is practicing spirituality. Having too many wonderful thoughts about the people in my life, and having feelings of love and compassion. Having respect for all living things. And trying to be kind and just. I think negative thoughts cut us off from our spirituality. However, negative thoughts are part of being a human, and we cannot escape them. I think that most people with autism who are non-speaking are spiritual. I am guessing it's because it's torture not being able to voice our thoughts, and we turn to God to make sense of our struggles. Not being able to talk is probably the hardest thing anyone faces. Having a voice is not only saying what you want but saying what happened to you. People happily mistreat those that are vulnerable and unable to say what has been done. I think Western culture doesn't want to take time to nurture people. They want to move fast, have success, and not bother with anything that can slow them down. In that haste, they miss what's truly important. The gifts we have to offer and the love we emanate. I don't know if how I'm treated will ever change, but I am hoping to educate the world that non-speakers are intelligent and hope people will change. I want to be treated like an equal. Angels come to me in my dreams and they tell me that all is not what it seems. They tell me this looks real but it isn't. For me not to worry about my physical limitations. Each time I make the choice to choose love over fear, I am getting closer to my true essence. They are wanting me to experience the joy in this life. Since we are already facing so many challenges, it is of utmost importance that we have access to whatever blossoms our spirituality. We need to feel bliss, and spirituality can provide that.
Our goal in this project was to learn, but also to share voices. So we really hope that you heard Devon's voice and Sandra's voice and the different voices of from the quotes that we shared with you today. And really, this project has stretched a lot of us in the conversation since 2024, since we started. And Margie and I, who work closely together, we're constantly stretched and taught a lot throughout this project. We've seen how challenging the conversation can be, but also how rich and important it is, especially for the adults who we spoke with. So we hope that now that we've opened the conversation, that you are part of it as well. And this project really, it's an ongoing conversation. And we still have analysis to do, as Margie shared, but we have a few next steps here for us to all think about, especially as the majority of you on this call are from the community living sector specifically. And firstly, we've come to understand that we need to understand that spirituality is a need. Our participants said yes, spirituality is important for them, and it is an aspect of flourishing, well-being, and resilience for them. And now it's our job in the different jobs that we have to listen and understand this need. Secondly, we've come to understand that it is appropriate and relevant to use the 4 points of connection to discuss spirituality. We've seen that, yes, there are many different ways to discuss it and describe it. And yes, at beginning we thought we needed a common definition for agencies to use, but the more we spoke with participants and heard from them, we realized that this diversity, this mix of approaches is rich, and a broader way to describe and understand spirituality is more relevant. At the same time, though, the big question remains, so how? How do we do this? If 4 points of connection is a framework we can use, a model we can use to discuss spirituality, how do we support the curiosity and openness that we're seeing from people who are exploring or want to explore more about their spirituality? And this is where we point to Curiko. We've learned a lot from the great work done from our partners at Curiko, and we see how the participants have really valued the approach and how the peer spirituality explorer, Tanya, really co-explored alongside the participants in doing and discussing spirituality together, and how much this approach was appreciated. So we encourage everybody on the call here to explore that model a bit more and understand what that looks like. And so with that in mind, as for reference again, we wanted to share, here's how engagement could look like if we consider Curiko's model. Tanya in particular created moments of authentic exploration to welcome inclusiveness and did so in an open manner, very much like other Curiko programs that currently exist and already pre-existed what Tanya was doing. But she allowed participants to engage with spirituality where they were at. And though it was only 6 people that we spoke with, and we know that that doesn't represent all adults with IDD, it was very clear that this was a special approach that they very much valued. This created space for them to be with other people. At the same time, it gave them resources that they can use and then also create. And then they were given a platform to speak and hear from others about something that was very important to them, spirituality, but it was through a co-exploring experience. So something for us to think about. And at this point, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much. We've shared a lot, but we know you might be coming with questions, thoughts as well, and we'd love to hear from you. And as you feel free to, as you ask questions, to raise your hand or add them into the chat box. Margie and I are here, but as well, we've invited, of course, Gord is here from Possibilities, the key liaison from that partner, as well as Kathy Anthony, who is the key liaison from our partner Kinsight, and Tanya, of course, the peer spirituality explorer from Curiko, and Sandra, who opened us off today with that wonderful video. So please, we're here to chat and answer your questions.